Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this February 5th, 2024 episode. I appreciate y'all joining us again. I'm the host of Mach 10 Sports here doing our show on the SEC Unfiltered platform. Again, Dave Shoemate, former personnel guy in college football, worked in college football for about 10 years, leading recruiting departments, 4 different SEC schools, worked at Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, Georgia. Here to give it to y'all. Again, we cover all SEC basketball and baseball stuff you're getting again from SEC Unfiltered on a day-to-day basis from Chris and the boys. But again, appreciate Chris. Let me have this platform on Monday and Thursday nights. I hope you enjoy this episode. Like, subscribe on our channel over at Mach 10 Sports. Also, if you're not subscribed to SEC Unfiltered, what are you doing? But again, guys, let's get started. We got a good one. I know this can be a sad time for some people. It's officially a dead period in college football recruiting. A lot of people are getting a little upset. I've heard a lot of people be, man, I don't know what I'm going to do after the Super Bowl's over. I don't know what I'm going to do after the Super Bowl's over. Well, the good thing is we got college hoops. We got the back half of SEC basketball here. We're about to hammer home. I'll get into that in just a minute. We also got SEC baseball starting here in just under 2 weeks. Yeah. I mean, not this Friday, but next Friday is when we kick off then. Like I mentioned, it's SEC, or it's officially a dead period in college football recruiting. So a lot of the teams, a lot of people aren't really taking people in the second February sign-in period. But so a little of them were just kind of back when it went dead in February. When I first started, February was not dead. So you'd be working on your next junior day or your big – teams used to host a lot of big recruiting weekends this upcoming weekend and beyond in February, but coaches needed a time off. So now you're just kind of adjusting to getting your roster right, figuring out how you're going to go about from installation from spring ball standpoint. But one of the better months of the year if you work in college football. But we do have a fantastic show for you tonight. Another great guest, Jake Crain from Crain Company, will be joining us. He was down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl this past week. He's going to join us, talk a little bit about that. Like I mentioned, I think we're going to have a photo finish to the 2024 SEC regular season championship on the hardwood this year. I'm going to give you the final standings for all 14 teams in SEC play. I'm going to tell you who's going to win it all the way 1 through 14. We're going to get to that at some point in the show tonight. We'll also review this past weekend's action and preview this week's action as well. Let me get that link over to our guy, Jake Crain. And we will get that rolling. Sorry if you hear a baby in the background. That's the newborn baby we got over here. Let me get Jake. There we go. Again, we got a jam-packed one and good. I'm excited to hear what Jake had to say about his time down in Mobile. Let's shoot him the link. Sure, sad guest. And we will get rocking and rolling, guys. Perfect. We are rocking and rolling. Chat rooms firing. Here we go, guys. All right, lock it in, guys. Let's go around the SEC first. As you probably, if you missed it, SEC Big Ten have came together with the alliance. As Ross Dellinger reported, he's been on our show multiple times. Great guy. We actually went to the same high school, randomly enough. But big flex by Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, and Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner. As we always say, when enough people get mad, things start to happen. It's bad enough now, and it's happening to most universities across the country. The NCAA just doesn't have any teeth right now, and I think when you start barking up the wrong tree, not saying Tennessee was in the complete right, not saying that. They committed some violations, but I think some people are like, so you're going to step in now and penalize us from this standpoint, from a booster. Say, you know what's going on, NCAA is what I'm trying to say is you know it's pay for play. Let's don't pretend like, oh, well, Tennessee's out there doing pay for play. So is Florida State. So is Florida. Like, what are they possibly doing? Like, they didn't know this was going to happen when they didn't set these guidelines up in the first place. Now, again, I don't think this is going to be the official end of the NCAA. I think there's a potential place for them outside of football for sure. I'm even, after doing some research this past weekend, I'm not even against football and basketball going to do their own thing. And maybe down the line baseball, but most baseball programs don't bring in the revenue. But you're telling me the network wouldn't go pay for the NCAA or the college basketball end of the year tournament, whatever you want to call it, if they were to separate from the NCAA, because that's how the NCAA gets a lot of their money. That's how they get their big check, is the tournament in March. Again, I don't think we'll honestly see a whole complete demise of the NCAA. I don't really think we need to, but I do think this is the first step in the right direction. The SEC, Big Ten, kind of starting their Power 2 conference, similar to the AFC, NFC. I think that's where we kind of were. I mean, unless you watched a little bit of the Pro Bowl last night, had me think NFC. I think that's kind of where we're at in the SEC right now. I really do. I think that's where we're at from a standpoint in college football. A little bit of a Cold War type situation now where Greg Sankey, Tony Batiti are trying to act like they're putting some plans together to bring up to the NCAA, I would say. But we all know how this is going to go. They're going to bring up solutions. I'm talking about that SEC, Big Ten. Probably some good, probably some bad that if we put it out in public, like I said, we'd probably be a little split on, maybe 7-25. But the NCAA isn't going to agree because, they were left out of that conversation. It's going to be a little bit, I'm that kid who's going to go take my ball and go home, is a little bit of how it's going to be, I think. I don't ever think we're going to get on the same page. I think at some point the SEC is going to separate. I think you probably see some Florida States, Clemson's, North Carolina's throwing those out there, maybe Virginia Tech, maybe a school or two from the new Big 12 coming in. Again, like we've talked about a lot on this show, a lot of people have talked about, Jake Crane's talked about on his show. I think we're going to have the haves and have-nots. And it just kind of is what it is. I think it's going to be fine. There's going to be some pros to it, but it's going to take some time to get used to, just like with all good things. There's going to be an adjustment period. And honestly, I don't think you'll completely see the end of the organization. It can't just be straight anarchy. There's got to be some rules and regulations. I just think people are annoyed with how the NCAA steps in on some things that's like, come on, dude. You're trying to enforce a rule that people are working in the gray area, I guess we would say. But before we finish around the SEC as well, just sharing the screen here, show you the Dartmouth stuff going on. Well, so this happened literally since everything's been going on. So breaking, the NLRB has ruled that Dartmouth's basketball team, the men's basketball team who are attempting to unionize, are employees of Dartmouth. So landmark ruling likely to be appealed, but the case could shatter the NCAA's amateurism model. So again, kind of right up the alley of what we were talking about from that standpoint. But just going on before we get Jake on in about 5-6 minutes. Around the SEC, continuing. Ole Miss pitcher Xavier Rivas out for the year with a torn UCL. I feel like we see this. Sorry, let me repeat that. With a torn UCL here in your elbow. If I remember, Rivas is left-handed. So in his left elbow, he's going to have surgery. He's out for the year. Happened in a scrimmage on Friday. Was competing for that Friday, Saturday night slot. It's disappointing. Arkansas's had a couple guys go down. I feel like you see that every year in the SEC. It's so much wear and tear on these guys' arms now. Year-round baseball, not even going back to like if they're playing in the Cape Cod leagues and stuff like that. It's going back to when they were doing the travel leagues. I mean, it's unbelievable how much wear and tear, how many of these pitchers are just out for the year. I mean, Ole Miss had this last year happen to him with Hunter Elliott. Came back for, I think, an inning against LSU last year and just couldn't get it going. So not a great start. Big pitching is a massive question mark for this Ole Miss team heading in. I think they're going to have the bats. I think just like Mississippi State, they're a cross-state rival. It's going to come down to pitching for both teams. It's going to come down to pitching. I like the lineups 1 through 9 for both teams, but big loss for Ole Miss. Before we get Jake on here, just want to go over real quick Josh Pate's SEC power rankings that he put on last night. Give you a little feel for that. Some things we may agree with, some things we don't. But I thought it was a good thought here. So what he's taking in here, to be fair to him here, he's valuing a rolling 3-year snapshot of the following: on-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, resource pool. So when I'm reading this, and if you hadn't seen this already, it's a 3-year snapshot of those 4 things he put: on-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, resource pool. Leading off with Georgia, number 1. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Nobody's going to argue that one. We can move on to that. Alabama, I mean, 3 years we're going to go back, but there's a lot of question marks in Alabama here. And to be fair, you could probably make an argument wherever you put them. If you put them outside the top 4 with new head coach Kalen DeBoer, people will be like, what the hell? Alabama's been the standard for the past 17 years. I get why you put them 2. I would probably put them at number 2 as well. On-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, resource pool. I mean, That's the University of Alabama when it comes to football. I mean, I get it. I'd stay there. Number 3, Texas. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I think Sark's got them rolling into the new SEC well. On-field performance, playoff last year, talent acquisition, the recruiting at a high level. Sark's going to be there. I like the stability, and we know Texas has the resources. Check all 4 boxes. I agree with that one. I wouldn't disagree with you if you put Texas 2, though. Wouldn't disagree with you. LSU at 4, I saw some people arguing that today. I think we forget that LSU's defense was so bad last year that they did win the SEC West in 2022. I think we forget about that at times. I think their defense was so bad that it almost outweighs their whole season outside of, obviously, Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy and LSU winning 10 games. For whatever reason, their defense weighted them down. I think that's right. I do think that's right. This is where we kind of get a little tricky here, though. I think the top 1 through 4 is right. A little bit 5 through 10, I think you get a little. Oklahoma, maybe a little too high for me. Maybe a little too high for me right there. I would go Ole Miss. I'd probably go Ole Miss a little ahead of it because Lane Kiffin's taken them to 2 CFP bowl games, Sugar Bowl in 21, this past year, the Peach Bowl in 23. They've done more than what Oklahoma's done in the past 3 years. If this is Josh Pate's credentials, or what do you call it? Remember, on-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, and resource pool here. I'd move Ole Miss up to 5 there. And then, man, go back, folks. You're taking in 2 different eras here at coaches. You had Lincoln Riley in 21 when they went to the Cotton Bowl, lost to Tulane. I think you can make a case for me 6 or 7 here between Oklahoma and Tennessee. You can make any case, so I'm not going to argue against that. Texas A&M at 8. You got 21. They won 8 games. 22 losing record last year, not good. Yeah. I guess. I think Missouri could be a little higher. The A&M, Auburn, Missouri ones are interesting to me. Auburn, I think, is a little bit more upside because I think Hugh Freeze is going to win there. He's going to win there. Just got to get the right people in line. I think they obviously have the funds there. It's just getting AB to equal C there. I think the hiring Will Redmond, the GM spot, will help from allocating the money standpoint to the right players. I think they've always had the money with the onward to victory. I think just that first year is Hugh Freeze getting his feet wet in the SEC, understanding the lay of the land from that, hey, it's changed since the last time you're in the SEC. And I'll be the first to say it. I've been on the show. I think they underachieved last year, but I think 2 things can be true at once. I think Auburn underachieved last year record-wise because I don't think the schedule was that hard. But I also think at the same time, Hugh Freeze is going to win at Auburn. That makes sense, but I think that's where it is. Again, I think it's all over the place from 5th to 10. You could go over South Carolina. Yeah. Some people want to be, how are they ahead of Kentucky? Well, they're 2-1 in the last 3 years against Kentucky. So I'd go that. Kentucky a little bit underwhelming there, 12. Florida's the shocker at 13, but I don't think he's wrong. On-field performance hadn't been there, 3 straight losing seasons. Talent acquisition's there, but it's trial by fire, baptism by fire. They're throwing a bunch of young cats out there every year. I feel like back especially in the secondary, just all over the place. Stability, not been there at all. Resource pool, not as great as some people believe. Arkansas, stability's been there, but after the first year, it's just kind of been going down here. I would agree with Pate there. Jeff Lebby, too early to tell. And then the boys at Vanderbilt, it's just a tough job. So we're not going to bash them, but leaving them at 16. But just wanted to bring that up before we're about to bring Jake Crain on. SEC power rankings according to Josh Pate here. Remember his credentials. You can go look at it on his social media. This is him valuing the SEC, rolling the 3-year snapshot of the following: on-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, resource pool. So just thought it was an interesting topic for us to cover on here. But let's get our guy, Jake. What's up, brother?
Dave, what's up, man? How's it going?
Jake, I appreciate you getting on, man. And I know you're a busy guy. You went back to the old stomping grounds last week, huh?
Yeah, it was great, man. Back in Mobile, got to go to Bluegill, get some of that tuna dip, some of those oysters, the real thing. But no, man, it was a great week. What Jim Nagy and them have done with that game, number one, keeping it in Mobile was obviously a huge deal. But now being able to have juniors go there, it really added a lot more layers to the depth chart. I thought the competition was as good as I've seen it. You sold out the game, first time, I believe, since 2010. So, it's just it's a first class, festival of football, as I like to call it. So it was a great time, man. I always enjoy it.
Awesome. All right. Again, guys, Jake Crain, host of the national sports show at Crain Company. If you don't already follow him, give him the follow at Jake Crain _. Jake already talked about it a little bit, talking about the Senior Bowl, how it was set up. Jake, go a little bit more in detail for people how it's set up a little bit from really, I mean, you've been there before. Again, Jake, if most people already know Jake has a background working in college football as well, so he knows the ins and outs. Jake, would you not agree when I say this? The week is more important than the game for just a casual fan. Like, more than likely, me and you talked about this when we were going over the show a little bit. You're more than likely the number 3 overall pick is not going to be in Mobile that week 9 times out of 10. You're talking about these are the guys that you go win with, that you go determine if you're going to have that great draft. Just tell the people a little bit, what's the week like, these practices, how they set up to really help these NFL personnel people.
Well, from a scout standpoint, the coolest thing about the week is obviously the access you get to the players and the way the drills are set up to really accentuate what they do. You're basically going through a scripted practice, but it has all the feature drills really. Outside of inside drill, you got team run and things like that, but you get to see the guys in true football situations that's, playing against other really talented guys. Again, that's where the juniors being able to come in at it made the competition even better. You're getting the one-on-ones with the DBs, wide receivers, the offensive line, and the defensive line. You can watch them go through drills. There's NFL coaches out there taking them through drills, seeing if guys can bend, how they move their feet when with their eyes up, how much leverage do they play with, being able to, hit the pads, hit the bags, have to run the hoop at defensive end. So you get everything. It is a buffet of football. And to me, the game that you brought up, there's a reason a lot of those scouts leave after the last practice, because if you can't see all you need to see by the time that week goes through with the way it's set up, then you're just not going to see it. I mean, the game is so peanut butter and jelly. It's funny. A lot of guys, in the game, you're trying not to get hurt, but guys, you got to play full speed. Typically when you get hurt is when you don't. But my father actually tore his ACL in the Senior Bowl. And it cost him, about 2 or 3 rounds. It's funny. I think he got drafted in the 5th round, and the linebacker taken before him was Bill Romanowski. And he always said, man, whatever son of a bitch just made that decision's a genius. So you saw how long Bill played. But no, man, it's the game. It's fun. You see some of the guys move around out there, but the week of practice is where it's at for sure.
So who were some SEC guys you liked that bounce around on both sides of the ball? Who struck some guys, and we'll get into in a minute, who you didn't like either. Who kind of stood out from it to you?
Well, look, Darius Robinson, I mean, if there are any questions about this guy's ability to bend, you look at it, I mean, he looks like Optimus Prime. He's the biggest 6'5" guy I've ever seen. I don't believe he's 6'5". I really don't. But watching him with the pads on, how wide he is, a lot of guys that can play inside and out like that are bigger and taller, and he's not wiry by any stretch of the imagination. They struggle with leverage, right? The first thing they want to do is stand up. This guy showed the ability to come off the ball, play with leverage, be able to play underneath his pads, but he's got a speed rush and his versatility. It's the same thing with Marcus Harris, who came out of Auburn this week, but Marcus is shorter. He's not nearly size-wise at the same level that Darius is, but he showed all the things that guys that are 6'2" and 6'3" can do. So the tape, you turn the tape on. The guy plays with his hands. He can play the 3-tech. Hell, I think he could play the nose in pass rush situations with his ability. But he really stood out on the offensive side of the ball. Ricky Pearsall, man. Look, and Ladd McConkey were 2 of the guys. Roman Wilson and Ladd McConkey, very similar in the way they play. But Ricky, look, it's funny when you watch him. The only thing he's really elite at is his ability to set up the DB. And he's not the fastest guy out there. He's not going to jump the highest, but he's NFL ready right now. I think he can help a team right now. Quarterback wise, I know we're going to get into that a little bit later, but I thought Fisk out of Florida State looked really good. I mean, he had to transfer teams the day of the game, but he's a guy that's going to be able to go in and help somebody on the inside there on the defensive line. And then look, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. I don't know if he had a bad rep the whole week. The tape speaks for itself when you watch him. You go back and watch all year. I always tell people the most underrated position is the center position for 2 reasons. One, it's so unbelievably hard to snap it accurately, step, and then go block some of these guys that are straight out of Mordor. And the second thing is, if you put a gun to my head and said, Jake, you got to find one player on this team to do your taxes and do it correctly, I would go straight to the offensive line meeting room and find the center. He's the quarterback of the offensive line. So I thought he had a great week, man. I could go down the list. I thought Wiley from TCU, the tight end, looked pretty good. I thought Theo did too from Penn State, two really big guys. You see a lot of those jump balls you get in the red zone. You look at guys like Parham from the Chargers. So, look, man, again, I'll just go back to adding the juniors, Dave, I think made an unbelievable difference in this game. Not that it wasn't as competitive the years before. Guys are out there grinding it out, but, every rep. James Williams from Miami. Oh my, Dave, I'm telling you. You talk about guys that aren't linemen that need to get off the bus first. I haven't seen a guy at that length. And it's not like he's thin, right? He's not like he's a thin safety that's tall and rangy. He's like Kyle Hamilton, man. I'm telling you, go watch his tape. I think people kind of slept on Miami's secondary a little bit this past year. Go watch his tape. He's going to be a heavy safety, a strong. He's going to play down. But his ability to flip his hips in coverage. Because again, and not to be too long-winded here, Dave, but I want to make sure I get all this out because I watched a lot of football this week, right? And we talk about it all the time, but we only go an hour and a half. I always tell people it's almost harder for corners or for safeties to cover guys than it is for corners because corners at least get to play press. Like even if I invert my safeties, having to play from depth while that guy's going forward without having the ability to slow him down is so. You talk about just leverage and it's like me on the golf course. Sometimes you just got to go with God, man. You just got to play with leverage and go with God. So,
it's like you're saying the receiver knows where he's going.
He knows where he's going.
We're not.
Yeah, and you can't trust him. You can't trust anything except their hips and their hands. That's what I always used to tell my guys. You can't trust anything but their hips and their hands. But it was a great week, man. I really enjoyed it.
You said, we signed Marcus when I was at Kansas. But you're right. You made a great point. He'd have been highly recruited if he wasn't 6'2". I forget what he meant. We talked about it last week on the show. I think just over 6'2", maybe right at it, whatever they got him at. But no, you're right. But moving on, going to the quarterbacks. You just brought it up a little bit. Tell me how Joe Milton and Spencer Rattler looked to you this past week.
Look, if you watch Crain Company, and I want to say this, I think Joe Milton, the interactions I had with him at SEC Media Day, is a first-class individual. I'm rooting for him. But all year, and even last year, going into the season, during the offseason, a lot of people are like, Joe Milton, player of the year, Superman. He hit a golf cart from 70 yards. Yeah. Well, he can't throw a slant, Dave. Like consistently. He can't make the routine throws routine. Like it's at least in baseball. He's a closer. That's what he is. I'm going to come in here and pump 102. All right. If I'm pumping 102, my breaking ball doesn't have to be great, right? Yeah. 3 batters, game's over. You can't have Joe Milton go in 6 innings. He can't make the routine throws routine and the nuanced throws. One of the reasons why Michael Pratt moved up this week, it's because he was able to make those in-between throws. You can't just go out there and throw the fastball for 9 innings. By the second inning, they're going to be hitting off the scoreboard. Right. So I don't think – Dave, you played. You've thrown things. If you haven't figured that out by now, if you're not able to adjust the tempo of the ball accurately due to the route and the situation and the circumstance you're in, you're not going to have success in this game. That's why guys on the long drive competitions don't play in the PGA. That's great. You can hit it 800 yards, but you can't putt. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Same thing.
The old drive for show, putt for dough.
It's a real thing. The check down. We saw it all year, right? And guess what? A lot of times when guys that are able to throw it as hard as Joe Milton can, when they miss, where do they miss? They miss up. Well, Joe Milton knows that, and I can see it on the shorter throws. He's trying not to miss up. He's throwing it 3-4 yards away from guys in short. It is what it is.
No, you're right. Spencer Rattler, what do you look like out there?
Look, I probably another cool part about the Senior Bowl is being able to see how big the guys are in person. Yeah. Spencer's not a big guy, right? Cody Strader was even smaller than I thought, but you play running back, you can get away with it. Here's what I like about Spencer. Spencer's always had the ability. He's always been a very good passer of the ball, even when he was coming out of high school. And I didn't love Spencer Rattler coming out of high school because of his attitude. I didn't like him when he was at Oklahoma because of his attitude. And I don't know if there's been a player that has matured more than Spencer Rattler has in this transition, and I think it's helped him out tremendously. One of the biggest things I could say about him was, he threw the ball good in practice. I don't give quarterbacks a lot of – I'm not going to downgrade a ton of quarterbacks when they're out there throwing with receivers they have no chemistry with. That's an anomaly. That's a circumstance that's not going to happen. So I give them a little bit, I look at them fundamentally. How's the ball come out of their hand? Are they able to, anticipate very well? Obviously, how do they throw the deep ball? But with Spencer, he's always been a good thrower of the ball. But when he was at Oklahoma and it was going bad, you would see him hang his head, right? You would see kind of that Spencer Rattler. Well, if it's not going good for me, it's not going to be going good for anybody. He totally flipped the script at South Carolina. And he was a leader of that team with an offensive line that couldn't block somebody on social media. They couldn't pass protect for him. I said last year, outside of Jaden Daniels, Spencer Rattler may be the most important player to his team. I mean, he kept him in. It's not like they were dominant on defense either. So I'm happy for Spencer. I think he was the one quarterback that moved up pretty highly outside of Michael Pratt, who I thought had a really good week. He's a lot bigger than I thought, a lot thicker than I thought. But no, it was a really good week for Spencer. Got MVP of the game as well, and it just shows you how the maturation process, how big that is when these scouts look at it, and how it can pay off at the end. When you do it the right way.
No, I 100% agree with you. South Carolina wasn't any good last year. Like you said, without Spencer Rattler, could you imagine that? How bad it would have been without him.
It would have been a disaster. Listen, I like Lenore Sellers.
Yeah, I
like the next guy up, but Spencer could have said, you know what? I know we got some big games down the stretch, but I got a chance to go play in the NFL. We're not going to do anything. We may not make a bowl. I'm going to go ahead and opt out. That's not what he did. So I want to make sure to give him his flowers for that.
But Jake, you're also a well-rounded guy. So stepping away, 2 more questions. Again, appreciate you joining us. Jake Crain from Crain Company joining us. Appreciate his time. Jake, you're a well-rounded guy. Give us your thoughts on this whole SEC Big Ten Alliance merger that we just learned about at the end of last week.
Well, look, I mean, this is the biggest domino that's fallen yet. You can call it an advisory board, right? You can call it a gaggle of goons. You can call it whatever you want. Look, this is the start of the breakaway civilization that we're about to start living in at the highest levels of college football, and it's good. It's good. This is them. It is a flex. I mean, I think you said that earlier. They're showing they have the power to do this, and here's my thing. If you ever again, if you listen or watch our show, I can't stand the NCAA. I think they're the slimy middleman. I think they always have been, and I want them to be replaced. But I don't want this to turn into Gotham City, like after the Joker goes on Robert De Niro's talk show and there be no rules or anything and just chaos. I want a governing body, but I want a governing body by people that understand what is going on in the game of college football. I don't want to be run by a selective enforcement group like the NCAA. The way they punish people doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. There isn't equal justice in the NCAA. So let's get a governing body in here of guys that understand the game, that have had success in the game, right? And they have power. The NCAA has no power. That's why Tennessee just flipped in the middle finger. That's why Penny Hardaway was like suspended. No, it just, at the end of the day, they have no power. And I would rather it be run by football people. Now, if you're the ACC fan or a Big 12 fan, you're upset and you're pissed off. Look, I get it. But to the victor go the spoils, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it just is what it is. That's how it works. So they're not going to I don't think the ACC is going to disappear like the Pac-12. I don't think the Big 12 is going anywhere. I think the Big 12 is going to be the perennial conference of college basketball. And that's why I think they're kind of aiming with what they're doing. It's a smart move by your mark. So look, I mean, it's the start of what's going to come, and the SEC and the Big Ten are coming together, and then they're going to go, after they take out the NCAA, they're going to go fight the Klingons for interstellar domination.
Jake, last question.
Win.
The last question for you. You just brought up college basketball, so I'm going to swing it to you real quick. How many teams do we get into the NCAA tournament from the Southeastern Conference this year?
Man, dude, it is a bloodbath out there. All of college basketball is crazy.
Dude, 1 through 10 in the league. Any road game, 1 through 10 in the SEC, you could lose any night.
It's a nightmare. No, it's a nightmare. Like road wins.
We're not even talking Bud Walton Arena. I'm not even count. I'm sure you would.
No. I grew up in the era of SEC basketball when it was Kentucky and maybe Florida, or Kentucky and maybe Tennessee. Now, outside of a couple teams, it's like you're getting jumped by a group of ninjas every time you go on the road. Yeah. I mean, winning a road game in the SEC right now is worth its weight in gold. So look, I think they're going to get 9. I really believe it. And that's what happens when you start putting money into it and bringing in big-time coaches, and you decide to throw money at it. When the SEC wants to dominate something, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Look at softball. Look at baseball. Look at gymnastics. Look at women's basketball. Again, if they want to dominate it, then they'll dominate it.
Yep, you're right. Well, Jake, I appreciate you joining us, man. Appreciate you taking the time on Monday evening. Hell, you got to go to bed here soon, brother. I got a show.
Yeah, man. The show's in like 20 minutes. I got to go there and scream at Blaine for an hour and a half.
Again, Jake Crain from Crain Company joining us. Jake, appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. Be good, Dave. Appreciate you.
Later, man.
See ya.
Again, Jake Crain joining us, does a fantastic job on their show. If you turn on Twitter, you can't miss him. I was fiddling around on Twitter, 10 minutes for the show, and he was talking about how he hates the NCAA. I saw his video talking about it. So, still got a couple more things to cover. This show will probably be closer, about this one specifically, closer to 50 minutes. But moving on, talk a little bit, we're bringing some football. Jake talked a little about Senior Bowl here before we get into predicting the final SEC record for every team in basketball. Let's talk about, it's a concern for me here, the LSU defensive line heading in to the 24 season. No way to sugarcoat it. This LSU defensive line is a very thin group. And if you followed this league for just a second, you know you cannot win the SEC or even compete for the league title without even having a good front, especially on the interior. And that includes depth. The good news for LSU, in my opinion, though, hear me out. They hit a home run with this defensive staff. I like Bo Davis, been around the league, LSU, Alabama, Texas, Alabama, multiple stops. I like the edge rusher coach they just brought over from Missouri, Kevin Peoples. It's not a matter of if, but when they undoubtedly transform this unit to be a formidable one over time, I think. It's hard to say if that'll happen in 2024, though. That's why I'm bringing it up. When you go look at LSU's unofficial depth chart, when I say unofficial, we still got another spring portal window I'll talk about here in a minute. You only see 2 defensive tackles remaining. That's Jalen Lee and Jacobian Guillory. I mean, I wouldn't say they're top 2. I mean, Mekhi Wingo entered the draft, and so did Mason Smith. And a guy we're not talking about, Jordan Jefferson, the West Virginia transfer from last year. He was more productive than Mason Smith. Mason Smith has not played a lot of football in the last 2 years. Remember, in Brian Kelly's first year in 2022, he tore his ACL, I think, in the first series against Florida State in the Superdome. He struggles against the run. He could have used it a year with Bo Davis. I was disappointed he left. From talking to people over at LSU, though, just wrong people in his ear, kind of telling him, hey, how much better can you really get? I think he could have got better with Bo Davis. I'll be honest with you. So Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson, their top 3 interior guys are gone. They're only left with 2 scholarship guys right now. They did add Sean Washington, JUCO kid. He's adding on. They had a massive flip from Acadiana's Dominic McKinley, but he's just a true freshman. But clearly they need more bodies inside, even despite adding those 2. McKinley has the potential to be an elite defensive tackle with the right development, and I think he'll get it with Bo Davis. And LSU has the staff to get the most out of him. But unfortunately, he's not even an early enrollee, so he's not even on campus, won't get the 15 reps in spring ball or 15 practices of reps in the spring ball. So that development's got to wait for fall camp. That's a tough position to ask a freshman to come in. It's almost an impossible position. He's not going to be physically ready. That said, LSU will have an opportunity to fortify its defensive tackle position with the opening of another portal window this spring. It's a 2-week window, the end of April. There's also some JUCO guys out there. I think Garden City, I believe he's from the Kali Muhammad kid, who apparently is going to be a priority for the LSU staff, but he's kind of just a guy too. I mean, the Tigers, I do think they're a much better position on the outside. I'll say that. Kevin Peoples, coming over from Missouri, is inheriting a much better bunch than Bo Davis is. I mean, they got Braden Swinson, Savion Jones coming back. I like the young cats, Deshaun Womack and Paris Shan. I think they're going to be solid players. They have some experience returning. And then they signed a good freshman, Ahmad Burrow from Ruston, Gabriel Relaford coming in from Evangel Christian. They got some signees they're coming in, but it's the guys that they got to count on in 24. Future, it's not, again, I'm going to mention it for LSU. It's not a matter of if when they get this defensive line unit going. I just don't think it's going to be in 2024. This group as a whole, very underwhelming in 2023 last year. And they lose their 3 best guys in Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith, and Jordan Jefferson. Like I said, the coaching is going to be undoubtedly improved, but I don't think you can put together an SEC championship level defensive line through a spring portal window. That's what they're going to have to do. If they were a freak show like a Walter Nolan, those guys, wide receivers are a dime a dozen for the most part in the portal. Interior disruptive defensive tackles that can go win you an SEC championship are not just sitting out there. They just don't, because they're retained. They get paid at their current school. But this position group could be why, and I think it's going to be why, LSU doesn't finish in the top 4 of the league next year. And I think it's a real possibility they miss the playoffs next year because of this. Because of this. It's going to get fixed. 25, 26, 27, and beyond, it's going to be fine. Next year could be rough for the Tigers. Could be rough. Could be rough. Moving on, we're going to the hardwood now. Gonna recap the weekend quickly, a little bit more quickly than we normally do on the show. But Texas A&M gets the 67-66 win against Florida. They had to have it. Must have for A&M. You got to protect your home court. They had to have this because they lost to Ole Miss at home last Saturday. You got to hold serve at home. Me and Jake were just talking about it. It's like he said, it's getting jumped by a bunch of ninjas, 1 through 10, when you go on the road in this league. Outside of Missouri, Vandy, Arkansas, yeah, that's really probably it. Any team could lose on any given night. LSU at home is a lot different than they are on the road. They shot really well the other night against Arkansas, or the other day against Arkansas. But for Arkansas, for A&M, same old thing. They're not going to shoot well from three, 26%. They're not going to shoot well from the free throw line. That's them. That's their DNA. Either Wade Taylor, Boots Radford's going to have to go off every performance. Florida just got stuck in a rut a little bit offensively in the second half. Around that 13-minute mark, they went on 2 scoring droughts. A&M took advantage of it. But I knew it was going to be a tough game for Florida. Florida's coming off back-to-back overtime wins, and A&M needed this one more. Just a tough SEC road game. Florida had a chance, probably should have won the game. It's at A&M. A&M had to have it. They got it. Still a good week for Florida. Won at Rupp. They had 2 road games that went 1-1. So a good week for Florida. Auburn rallying in the second half to get a much-needed SEC road win in Oxford. Really a true tale of 2 halves. That would make Avery Johnson blush. If you don't remember Avery Johnson when he coached at Alabama, he used to say it after every game. It was a true tale of 2 halves. This really was. High-scoring affair here. Both teams shot well. Ole Miss came out on fire. Couldn't have shot it better in the first. I think they shot 50% from beyond the arc in the first half without having to look it up. But Auburn, 54% field goal percentage, 44% from 3. Ole Miss, 45% field goal percentage, 42% for 3. So they went down 8% in the second half. Auburn's depth ended up just getting Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not a deep team. Auburn down 9 at the half just came out. Maybe had kind of not a flip their season because they weren't ever in trouble, but they got the road monkey off their back. Auburn just deep in the front court and back court. I mean, Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell, and Jalen Williams, I think, do a phenomenal job. One of the deeper front courts in the league, and back court too. They don't really have a dude I trust in that back court. Like Aiden Holloway, man, he's on. He's just a freshman though. Katie Johnson, a lot of teams would be all right with him shooting, especially on the road. But again, not a good matchup for Ole Miss. They just don't have the depth this year, and they were without Jamarian Sharp, which hurt them in the front court as well. And I don't understand why Bruce doesn't get Janai Broome the ball more. I don't understand that. Alabama dominating Mississippi State 99-67. Alabama's most complete game of the season. They didn't even shoot well from 3. 15 for 48, 31%. If it weren't for a miss Sam Walters dunk, they get their 700th game this season. They do. Their 100-point game this season. Grant Nelson has grown into this role. Rotations are getting comfortable. I like Alabama, the way they're feeling it. They got Grant Nelson at 5. His length's causing people trouble. He only had 2 points the other night, but it seems like he's a lot more comfortable in that role. The rotation's getting down. Muhammad Wagi looking a little bit better. But for State, again, similar to A&M, just kind of is what it is. You come to expect them to not shoot well from 3 and at the free throw line. Both Josh Hubbard and DJ Jeffries both got nicked up. DJ Jeffries, I think, is going to be out for a couple of weeks, Chris Jan said today, because something with his knee. He tried to come back, but he couldn't give it a go. But when Alabama's shooting well, it's not a good matchup for Mississippi State. It's not a matter of if Alabama will win, but by how much. But when Alabama's not shooting well and State can muck it up, they give Alabama trouble because of their physicality. But Alabama's probably the most complete game of the season there. Tennessee getting a big win on the road at Rupp Arena on Saturday night. Both teams did not want to go 0-2 this week. Somebody was going 0-2, but not Tennessee. Kentucky is now winless without DJ Wagner this season. A classic example of an older veteran team like Tennessee taking advantage of a younger, inexperienced Kentucky team. Almost looked a little too big for for Kentucky at times, where you have guys like Zakai Ziegler, Santiago Vescovi. I mean, I know Dalton Connect hadn't played in the league long, but Dalton Connect, Jonas Adu, Josiah Jordan-James, like those guys have played a lot of SEC basketball. And I mean, a lot of them were getting close to collecting Social Security. They've been in the league, been in college for a very, very long time. So we'll get some comments here. Del Rice, we needed Juju bad that game just to give us at least 10 points. I agree. When Juju is going off, like he did against Mississippi State on Tuesday night last week, they can beat anybody, especially at home. Ole Miss is one of those dangerous spark plugs team, I think, in the tournament. Again, I don't know if they go deep. There's a ceiling on this team because I don't like their depth. But if they're shooting like they were in the first half, I mean, they'd have been up double digits on anybody, 9, 10 points on anybody at home the other night. They really would have. They really would have. So I agree there too as well. South Carolina completing the season sweep of Georgia. South Carolina, just one of those teams that just seems to have it. I know it's cliche, but they do. Just another veteran team close to collecting some Social Security stuff. They know how to win these close games, even if they get into early holes. 4 guys were in double figures led by Colin Murray Bowles. And the others, as usual, you can name it probably, Meechie Johnson, Talon Cooper, and Josh Gray. Those are their 4 guys they can count on, especially Meechie Johnson and Talon Cooper. Georgia was up 10 at one point. I was like, yeah, kind of like my prediction here. Kind of like Georgia. No, sorry, I picked South Carolina, but I was like, I could see Georgia getting right at home. But South Carolina hit back down. You thought Georgia was going to get a big quad 1 win at home, but South Carolina, just a gritty team. Georgia just cannot close games out right now. They just can't. Outside of Jabir Abdur-Rahim, they got nothing going offensively. But I think the good thing for Georgia is the league has plenty of opportunities ahead. But if you're Mike White, you have to start winning some of these close games. You just do. You got to. You're running out of time a little bit. You're running out of time. I know you got 9 games left, 9 conference games. You're running out of time. These teams are doing the opposite. They're on both ends, opposite ends of the spectrum here. South Carolina's winning the close games, and that's why they're locked into the tournament right now. And Georgia's not. Not a lot separates them, but they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. South Carolina, sorry, they didn't. I don't know why earlier I said they completed the season sweep. What am I talking about, Dave? So they say split it. South Carolina got the big revenge. That was one of South Carolina's 2 conference losses against Alabama and Georgia at home earlier. We got another comment in here from M. Duncan. Is Beamer utilizing Lenore Sellers in 2024? Luke Doty is listed as an athlete on the roster. Does he shine on the field in 24? If so, what position? Maybe in a little gadget situation there. We'll come back to that, though. We're talking a little basketball right here. LSU dominating Arkansas in a 95-74 win. Matt McMahon decided to start Trey Hannibal over Jalen Cook, who's kind of been the straw that stirs that drink for the Tigers this year. It was his best offensive performance of conference play. The Tigers were so much more efficient than really any other game they played in the SEC this season, shooting 55% from the field and 52% from 3, fueled that effort. LSU came out on fire, going 11 for 14 to start the game. Really impressed with LSU. Like Alabama, I think this was LSU's best game of the season. Random enough, they play Saturday morning in Baton Rouge. Arkansas just is what it is. Another double-digit loss in conference play. College basketball's most disappointing team this year. We talked about it last episode. We're not going to talk about it to death here, but will Eric Musselman be there next year? I don't know. But improved offensively in the second half from the Hogs, but damage was done. You saw Mekhi Mitchell and Musselman getting into it on the sideline. It's a mess over there. It's a mess. Then finally, Vandy gets the 68-61 win over Missouri. Vandy getting their first SEC win of the season. Both teams shot poor. Missouri shot 26% from 3, and Vandy shot 22% from 3. Yeah, just somebody had to get a win here. Vandy held strong at home, getting the 68-61 win over Missouri. And we'll get in here in just a minute and predict the rest of the conference. But first, let's go through the net rankings as we head into this week. Alabama coming in at 5, Tennessee 6, Auburn 8th, Kentucky 26th, South Carolina 38th, Florida 39th, Mississippi State 44th, Texas A&M 49th, Ole Miss 61st, Georgia 88th, LSU 93rd, Arkansas 131, Missouri 136, and Vanderbilt 226. Weekly schedule, running through it for you right here. Tuesday night's matchups, guys. We got 2 games. The SEC, for whatever reason, is doing the 2 and then 5 or 4 because they're giving those teams off of the week. But Tuesday night matchup, Ole Miss at South Carolina. Gamecocks with a 69% chance to win, according to Kim Palm. It's at Carolina. Ole Miss hadn't been great on the road besides their win in College Station. I mean, they were down 7 with 3.5 minutes left to go. I like South Carolina in this matchup. Again, physical team at home. Again, it's a rock fight in the league on this road. Give me the home team. I agree with Kim Palm here, 69%. Kentucky at Vandy. Kentucky with an 84% chance of winning. I like Vandy in this one as well. I like Vandy. I like Kentucky to get the 84. I like Kentucky to get the win here it's going to be Memorial. but it'll probably be a bunch of Kentucky fans, I'd assume, down there. Don't see a lot more wins for Kentucky, for Vandy coming down the stretch here, just like Missouri. But I think Kentucky gets a bounce back, much needed win to get back in that win column after last week. Then Wednesday night's action, LSU at Tennessee. Tennessee with a 91% chance of winning at Thompson-Bowl Arena. Not many people are going to beat Tennessee at home this year. I know South Carolina did it last week. I just don't think LSU is going to be able to do that. I think LSU's best shot to get a win this week is Saturday at home. Early matchup against Alabama. Alabama coming off a big game against Auburn earlier in the week. Give me Tennessee. I'll be interested what that line is come Wednesday morning on that one. But I like Tennessee double digits there. So I'm with Kim Palm right now. 3 across the board. And then the big matchup of the week. Feels like they just played, and they did 2 weeks ago in Coleman Coliseum. Alabama at Auburn. Auburn with a 63% chance of winning at Neville Arena. Yeah, this is going to be a real war for Alabama. Auburn has to have this, I think, to stay in the SEC championship race, or regular season championship race. Maybe not, because the schedule in the back end's easier. I think out of the 3 teams really competing for the title between Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee, I think Tennessee, Auburn, then Alabama have the easier routes. Remember, Alabama still got to go play Florida twice. They get them at home and at Florida. And Florida's one of the best scoring offenses in the league. Again, Auburn with a 63% chance of winning. Yeah, I think Auburn, I know Alabama's 2-1 their last 3 trips to Neville, but one was a COVID year, but they got a big win last year. I just don't think it's this year. I don't necessarily think Alabama's going to go play bad. They don't get blown out in tornadoes. They've only done that single-digit times in his 3 years. Or 5 years at Alabama now. Give me Auburn at home. Give me Auburn at home. They need it. They got to have it. It's a tough place to go win. And then Texas A&M at Missouri. A&M with a 63% chance of winning. Missouri, I've talked about it. They got their 8th, 9th, 10th guy from last year off the bench. Noah Carter, Sean East, Nick Honor, guys like that. No one scares you from a scoring offensive threat. Texas A&M will make it. This game will be ugly, but I trust Wade Taylor, Boots Radford, and Henry Coleman more. A&M, Buzz Williams and the boys go notch back-to-back wins in conference. They need it. They need to start collecting some wins because you go look at any bracketology, they're on kind of the last 4 in bubbles, last 4 buys kind of team right now. Then Georgia at Mississippi State. Mississippi State with a 74% chance winning. It's a big game for both teams. Both need a win here. Battle of the Bulldogs. Mississippi State probably the toughest slate of anyone to start off conference play easily. They playing Bama twice, Tennessee, Auburn, at Kentucky. Yeah, they at Florida. Tough. Georgia would love to have this win. Be a quad 1 win for them. But I like Mississippi State at home. Hump's hard place to win. I think Chris Jans knows these next 4 that they have, they need to bare minimum go 3-1. I think it starts off on Wednesday night with a win in Starkville. I like Mississippi State. So I agree with Ken Palm this week across the board. I like South Carolina. I like Kentucky. I like Tennessee. I like Auburn. I like Texas A&M. And I like Mississippi State. I like Mississippi State. So getting into it, before we get you out of here, we got the SEC predicted records of finish here. Let's see if anybody else has any comments before we really dig deep here. So I thought we were going to miss their leader. Yep. Mississippi State, like 2022 Vols, dangerous but not consistent. I would agree with that, Jessica. You just don't trust them offensively with you. At home, I think they can beat anybody. On the road, though, they just do not shoot well. They don't look confident. They have guys passing up open shots, and that drives me nuts. That's what drives me nuts. And then they're bad at the free throw line. So I agree with you, Jessica, 100%. SEC predicted order of finish. Let's go with it. Going in order. Let's start at the bottom with 14. LSU. I got them. Sorry. We got one more page. Missouri. Somebody call me crazy. I got them going 0-10, 0-18. I don't have them winning a conference game. Literally do not have it. I don't know where they're going to get it. I just don't see the lack of offensive scoring on a consistent nightly basis just does not leave me much hope. I think they're going to be the cellar dweller. Vandy, I think they finished 1-17. Their lone win will be Missouri. Remember, Missouri and Vandy do not play each other again. So this will be it. Maybe Vandy sneaks up on someone at home, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be their lone win, is the 1-17 win that they got this past Saturday night at home. Then I think it's going to be Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be rolling in here, I think, 4-14 with losses. They already have losses to Auburn, at Georgia, at Florida, South Carolina, at Ole Miss, Kentucky, at LSU. And then I think they're going to lose to Georgia, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at A&M, at Kentucky, LSU, and at Alabama. I think they're going to go 4-14. I don't see a lot of optimism. Team kind of seems checked out. Devo Davis sitting with the team right now. I don't know what Trevon Brazil's doing. We mentioned Mekhi Mitchell getting into it with Muss. I don't like the isolation offense Muss is playing with this year. I like Tremont Mark. He can kind of carry him. He's trying to lead the team right now. He tried to separate Muss and them, but outside of that, I don't know. I think they're booked in to be on Sad Wednesday. And this is going to surprise some people, I think, but that shows you how deep the league is. Georgia coming in at 7-11, in my opinion, here, with losses to Tennessee, at Kentucky, at Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, at Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, at LSU, Ole Miss, and at Auburn. I just don't trust this Georgia team. I just don't think they can go get the big win. Again, it goes back to their Alabama matchup on Wednesday. They're 16 at one point at home. You can't lose those games. They had South Carolina at 10. They're not holding up serve at home. And I don't think this is indicative to they're not a bad team. They're solid. I think the league's so deep, you lose enough close games, your record's not going to look good. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Can Mike White keep this team together? Like, hey, guys, let's keep showing up to work every day, even though we're losing these close games. Second year in the program, they're better. They're a lot better. I like Noah Tomlinson. I like Demery. I like Abdur Rahim. I do. I like a lot of these guys. Even Blue Cane's fine every now and then. He'll take some dumb shots every now and then. But they're going to be better than the record indicates. But still, kind of what your record are. So that would set up Sad Wednesday to be Georgia, Arkansas, Vandy, and Missouri. Didn't think we'd see Arkansas in that. But here we go. Coming in at 10th, LSU, 8-10. With losses at Auburn, A&M, at Georgia, at Tennessee, Alabama, at Florida, at South Carolina, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. I've liked this team a little more since Jalen Cook, and I think they're going to get some wins at home at the PMAC. And if I'm Alabama, this game scares me. At 11 a.m. tip. It's early. It's coming off a big emotional game on the road at Auburn. It'll be Alabama's second road trip of the week. That's a kind of game LSU could maybe get at home. They shoot extremely well. They start off the other night against Arkansas. And I know it's Arkansas. They started off, 11 for 14 from the field? It's just that's what it is. I mean, I think this team could get a few wins to make their record better, to be just below 500 because they're going to be solid at home. I like LSU coming in at 8-10 or finishing 8-10 in the league. Going to the ninth place team, the Texas A&M Aggies, finishing 9-9. I got them with LSU at Auburn, at Arkansas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, at Tennessee, South Carolina, and at Ole Miss. Texas A&M is just not consistent. Don't score well enough. They're almost count on Wade Taylor and Boots Radford too much. I don't see them going to win a lot of road games against good teams. They'll drop some at home, but I think they'll also hold serve as well. That Tennessee game here soon will be interesting when when Tennessee heads to Reed Arena. But I think A&M is going to be right at 99, 500. It's going to be a photo finish to see if they make the tournament. Coming in at 8th, Mississippi State. I think they're going to finish just above 500 at 10-8 because the back half of the schedule is easier than the front half. They played a murderer's row. I already mentioned it to start the year. Toughest start of any team in the SEC in their first 9. But I think they're going to – obviously, I'm reading off some of their losses already. But at South Carolina, Alabama, at Kentucky, at Florida, at Ole Miss, at Alabama, Kentucky, and at Auburn. I think State could only lose 2 games the rest of the year. Kentucky at home and at Auburn. Call me crazy, but that's how tough their schedule was. I like what they're doing. They're inconsistent, but I think they get some games at the hump here. They play some teams that they're better than. Got to get DJ Jeffries healthy. Get Tolu Smith back in shape. He looks winded. And Alabama will do that to a lot of teams, though, because they're paced. But he looks winded. I like Mississippi State to finish above 500, make the tournament because the schedule gets easier on the back end. I got Ole Miss finishing 10-8. I think you'll be tied there. Obviously, Ole Miss at Tennessee, at LSU, at Auburn. Auburn at home, they lost. At South Carolina, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, and Alabama. Like the Rebs, not a deep team, but if they get hot, especially at the Pavilion, that place was – I was there the other night. That place was rocking at the Pavilion. That was a rocking environment, the way they moved that student section. It was loud for any team. I mean, Bruce Pearl was talking about how impressed he was. But I think Ole Miss is going to finish above 500 in conference. I think you're going to make the tournament 10-8. Dangerous team when they're playing well, but not super deep. Then I got Kentucky and Florida, both finishing Kentucky, Florida, and South Carolina, both finishing 12-6 here. I got the 3-way tie there. I'm not going to go over the games. It's just all 3 tie. But South Carolina will have the tiebreaker, so they'll be finishing 4th, Florida 5th, Kentucky 6th. But all 3 of them finishing 12-6 across the board there. Again, Lamont Paris will be SEC Coach of the Year by far. Just a really impressive job. Really impressive what he's done this year. Florida, finally, they're starting to get going now. Even their loss at Texas A&M, I'm not discouraged. They should have won that game. They're better than Texas A&M. If that game was in Gainesville, they win that game. I think Todd Golden's team, they're all finally starting to get healthy. After Alabama, probably, Kentucky, Florida, they have some offensive firepower, dude. Riley Kugel, got Walter Clayton, got Pylon. Those guys, I like their big guys, dude. They got Florida's a team, I'm telling you. That's why I don't really like Alabama winning the league, because Alabama still has to play Florida twice in Tuscaloosa and Gainesville. It's a tough draw this year. If there was ever a year to get Arkansas twice, you'd have loved to have it. But M. Duncan says 9 games left in the season. Gamecocks play Ole Miss, Vandy, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State in that order. Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to go 12-6. I think South Carolina's going to go 12-6. Phenomenal year. Make the tournament. They'll be in that 5-6 range, in my opinion. And then we get to the final 3. Kind of hinted at it. I think Alabama, because they got the tougher schedule, finishes 13-5. I think that's why they're going to get it. I think they'll lose at their 5 losses. They'll be at Tennessee, which already happened, at Auburn, at Kentucky. Tennessee, I think, gets Bama at home. I think it's a bad matchup for Bama this year. And then, like I mentioned, at Florida. That's a game that's tough. But I got Bama finishing 13-5. I think they'll be a top anywhere from, I think they'll be a 4 to 5 seed. That's where I think Bama will end up being. They could compete for the league. I'm saying they won't win the SEC this year, the regular season, make it 3 out of 4 years, which would be unbelievable, because they have the tougher schedule out of the 3 teams really competing for it, especially after Kentucky's loss on Saturday between Tennessee, Auburn, and Alabama. Then I got Auburn coming in 14-4. Auburn's always going to hold serve at home, I think. I think they already lost at Alabama, at Mississippi State. I think they're going to lose at Florida on Saturday, and they'll lose at Tennessee. So I think that's the 4 losses there. Then I got Tennessee winning the league at 15-3. They already took a loss at Mississippi State. They took the loss at South Carolina at home, and I think they'll go drop. I'm going to say it. Call me crazy. People are going to make a revenge game. They're going to go beat South Carolina. They'll lose to South Carolina again at Colonial Bank Arena. I'm calling it right now. That'll be their 3rd loss. Their schedule's not that difficult in the back half. But I think they'll drop one again, and I think at South Carolina, that's their toughest road trip left. I think Tennessee's going to win the regular season, though, at 15-3. I do. I just think they're going to win the regular season at 15-3. Again, I think it's a battle. It's a battle right now at top 3 for that spot. Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama. Give Tennessee the nod. Should be a really fun finish, though. Should be a really fun finish. Jake says 9. He thinks 9 get in. I'm going to go 8. I'm going to go 8 as we stand right now. I think Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina are locks right now. I think Florida's going to get in. Kentucky, that'll be 6. Ole Miss, 7. I'm going to go Mississippi State. Oh, man, and A&M's going to be on that bubble. But I think something happens here. My predictions aren't going to be right here. This is what I think, but we know it's not going to be right here. I might predict all this right. I think 8, though. It's a safe number there. It's a safe number. But let's go through it again. So I got Tennessee winning the league at 15-3, Auburn finishing 2nd at 14-4, Alabama 3rd at 13-5, South Carolina 4th, 12-6, Florida 12-6 at 5th, Kentucky 12-6 at 6th. We got the 3-way tie I talked about. Ole Miss, Mississippi State tied, but Ole Miss with the tiebreaker at 10-8, Mississippi State 10-8, Texas A&M coming in at 9th, 9-9, LSU 10th at 8-10, Georgia. We're going to Sad Wednesday now, guys. Georgia, they're better than this record, but it shows you how tough the league is. Georgia at 7-11, coming in 11th. Arkansas 4-14 at 12th. Vanderbilt 1-17 at 13th. And then Missouri, after winning Coach of the Year last year, Dennis Gates, or being at the top, having that phenomenal Missouri team last year, they're going to go 0 for this year, which is really not shocking. I didn't think they'd be very good because I don't like the lineup. But that's how I'm predicting the league as we stand today on February 5th. We covered a lot, guys. We covered a lot. I hope you had as much fun as I had on this one. We covered a great deal. We went in depth on the alliance, the merger between the SEC and Big Ten. We talked about the interior depth or lack thereof of LSU and why I think it could get them left out of the playoffs next year. It's not 2 scholarship guys right now, and you're not going to go fill defensive tackle spots, SEC quality, through a spring transfer portal window. You're just not. It's just not going to happen. They'll get it fixed, though, because they have Bo Davis, Kevin Peoples are going to get that right. I'm not worried about their development. It's just right now they don't have the guys right there. And like I said, you're not gonna go solve that problem through a spring portal window at that position, because those guys just aren't in the portal because they're retained at their former program if they're worth 2 cents. Jake Crain from Crain Company coming over, joining us, talking his week at the Senior Bowl. Did a phenomenal job breaking that down for us. Talked Big Ten SEC merger with us, and he thinks 9 teams from the SEC get in this year. And then I gave you my predicted SEC finish. Again, my top 4 teams: Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina. Bottom 4, you got Georgia, Arkansas, Mizzou, and Vandy. Again, guys, we got a hell of a week. We got great midweek matchups, phenomenal Saturday matchups as well. A lot going on here. It's a dead period, second sign-in period on February. I'll be back here on Thursday for our Thursday night show. But again, guys, go like, subscribe, follow us on all the SEC Unfiltered platforms. We're on all podcast avenues, wherever you get it. Keep joining us here on the live stream. I'm Dave Shoemate, Mach 10 Sports. Go give us the follow on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all podcast platforms as well. But again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Rate, review, tell me where I can make this show better. But again, appreciate you joining us on this Monday night. You have a fantastic rest of your week.